Good afternoon. Let's get this out of the way. Okay, perfect. In my lifetime, I envisioned being in a lot of places, standing in front of a crowd, being the last stop between me and happy hour is not one of them. Okay, so I'm gonna try to move through this quickly. Okay, so let me get the last piece out to start. Tourism's gonna be up. Okay, everywhere. Gonna have a great year. All right? So now I want to talk about one of my latest rants. And since I have the mic, I can do this. I operate a public venue. There's a couple of them in town. So here's some frequent questions that we get. When will TRAC Center start making money? The answer is likely never. Public venues, generally speaking, do not make money. Just like public pools, softball complexes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So here's the two of my favorite suggestions when I took the job. First one was from my mother. She said, honey, you just need to bring in more business. Makes complete sense to me. Didn't work, but it was a good suggestion. The second one was from my boss. I'd been there about 3 years, and I had predicted when I took the job we were going to get to break even, and I was gung-ho, we're going to make this happen. And my boss said, I was a little frustrated because we had a subsidy again, and he said, listen, it's not that complicated. Just spend less than you bring in, and you won't have a subsidy. Again, sound advice. So why can't we do that? I'm going to use Les Schwab as an example just to try to give you some way to. This is how I process this thing. There's a Les Schwab on Road 68, has about 5 bays for their tire store, okay? Now, when there's a snow day or a snow weekend coming up, they can use 25 bays all weekend long, okay? That place is nuts. So we're gonna take that store up there on Road 68, we're gonna add 20 more bays, so it's 25 bays. We're gonna take the lobby space, we're gonna make it 4 times larger. We're gonna add an assistant manager and enough staff so that on that, let's say 6 to 10 times a year when we have those snow days or some other similar event, we can manage those bays, okay? Then, when we know we have a snow day, so this weekend's gonna be a snow day, we're gonna close the store Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday because we have to set up for the snow day of Saturday, Sunday. Okay, so the store's closed, we staff it up, we bring in all the tires, we get everybody lined out, we do the schedules, we're ready. We open on Saturday, Sunday, we're hammered for the weekend, and then we close the store on Monday, and we take Monday and Tuesday to get everything out of the way so we can reopen for normal business on Wednesday. That's my business model. Home and Garden Show, we do 6 to 10 events that take the entire venue. Okay, so this thing is built to do a dozen times a year, have that capacity. Home and Garden Show takes 3 days to set up, has a slamming weekend, and then 2 days to clean out. So even though the event itself is great, it's profitable theoretically, it's excellent for the community, it's 5 days out of service for a 2-day show. That's a significant problem. Boat race weekend is another great example. I mean, sometimes that thing doesn't make money, and you know how many people are coming, and we know what the costs are, and we know how many people what we charge. So how do you manage that facility if you ran that year-round, like a fairground? It just doesn't happen. Scale, in hospitality case, scale actually has a cost increase. My second favorite question is, why doesn't the public sector build them? Well, the fairly obvious reason is that rich people are good with math. I know there's exceptions, but just as a general rule, rich people are good with math. The politically correct answer is because they are not directly profitable. They're just not built to do that. Otherwise, again, private sector would build them. We have a bazillion examples, softball fields, pools, senior centers, all of these, except oddly enough, only convention center type facilities have an expectation to break even or make money. Pasco Senior Center loses $250,000 a year, every year. In my 8 years at TRAC, I've never seen an article in the Herald saying, Senior Center loses money again, what are they going to do to fix it? I have, however, seen some variation of that article virtually every year of my 8 years about TRAC. It's kind of an interesting deal. The Senior Center is basically for the same purpose, except it has virtually no, arguably no benefit of economic development or bringing in outside visitors, but it's still set in a different class, so it's a little bit interesting. Why don't we close them? Well, I think it's a great question. There was some serious conversation a couple years ago about closing TRAC at one point in time. I think there's a couple answers, but here's the interesting ones. We're just, public venues are not the only ones that require community support. We're just the ones that get targeted. Pools, Southridge Complex is never going to make money. Aquatic Center that did not pass. Senior centers, softball, they all lose money. I asked the city manager, is Gary in the house still? Nope. Congratulations to Gary retiring. I asked him a couple years ago if I could just be slid into the parks budget, because they spend $2 million a year and it's never in the paper. Right? The other interesting one is, we'll just build another one. When we were having this discussion, there was a group of county people in the room, and I said, seriously, I want an answer to this question. Does anybody believe, raise your hand if you believe, within 2 election cycles of us closing TRAC's doors, that some county commissioner won't raise his hand and go, you know what we need? We need a big public venue. We need an equestrian center. We need a public pool. It's what we do for what we desire as a community for public life. Okay, so the economics for event centers, this came off of, this is Toyota Center's ticket sales from 2012. And Ticketmaster that they use tracks this, of course, down to the you-know-what. It's an excellent representation. I mean, you can see, I was a little surprised how far into Eastern Oregon, and frankly, they're selling as many tickets into Eastern Oregon and towards Yakima and towards Walla Walla as they are literally in the Tri-Cities itself. So pretty good example of the economic potential impact that venues or events like motocross, monster trucks, etc. bring. Much like Dr. Brooks said recently, shopping, restaurants, and other entertainment are the top 3. I think everyone's pretty much in agreement with that. Here's some interesting stats. In 2013, the Three Rivers campus and TRAC combined did about 860,000 people through the door. So Corey and I sat down and we estimated, based on, to some degree, that ticket chart, but some other factors, 30% of those people were from out of the area, 45 minutes or further. Fairly conservative number, in my opinion. Then we applied that times $125 per person, which is the lowest number the state assumes for visitor spending. That's $43 million. That's a conservative number. The fact is, people are going to spend that money, whether it's in our community. They're going to go to boat races, they're going to go to monster truck events, they're going to go to football games. It's just whether it's going to be in our community or another one. But they're not going to just not go if we don't have the venue. So here's my forecast. What time do you got? Oh, good. I'll be done in 5. We'll be out early. Okay. Historical trends. TPA is the $1.50 per room night tax that our visitors pay. Thank you, guests. And that does a lot of great things, but that makes occupancy stats a beauty because they're accurate. You can't cheat that. So if you take the taxes produced divided by the rooms, we did 534,000 hotel rooms in 2005, 583,000 hotel rooms in 2013, which is only an increase of 74,000 rooms. You could look at that and go 9% over 8 years, a little bit over 1.1%, a little bit anemic, until you go back into history and you look at what happened in those 8 years. For us to be even flat is phenomenal. So it really shows a good, well, what everybody else said, we're in a bubble. The hotel inventory, in spite of all the GMs in the market's perception, hasn't changed. It really hasn't. 126 rooms in 8 years. So the hotel inventory is virtually flat. The exceptional news is in the ADR, or average daily rate. So Benton County is the only one that really had good, accurate historical information, and Franklin County, frankly, follows these trends. It's just a little lower. In 2005, the average rate was $65 for a room in this market. In 2013, it was 86, which is about a 4% a year increase. Now that's beautiful news if you own a hotel, because average daily rate increases are just pure profit. If you get $50 for a room, or you get $52 for a room, costs you the same amount for the desk clerk, same amount for the housekeeper, same for the maintenance staff, same amount of electricity, same amount of breakfast food, everything else is flat. So any increase in average daily rate is just bonus money, and you can see the hotels are doing quite fine. The bad news is there's really virtually no state support budget for tourism, and I'll get into that in a second. Hotels will continue to experience a decline in market share, although I think the occupancy will stay relatively flat. Rate will continue to climb, but there are no more hotels coming online, and they are not going to increase the demand. I think in the market, we're still a little challenged with the split communities. It's been a recent discussion again. There is no real Winery Row, waterfront, performing arts center, public plaza. I mean, we've been talking about this in this community for 15 years. Where do you go? Where do you go park your car and spend 2 hours walking around? It's just really not, there's just really not a spot that's really conducive to that. You can do the mall, but and I love the mall, but walking around that for 2 hours makes me a little jumpy. There's a little too much traffic going through there for that. Here's the state tourism budget. The state of Washington has produced $500,000 for their state budget this year that is 100% privately funded, because the state in its wisdom determined that the state couldn't afford a marketing budget. You can see the comparisons of the people around us. Somebody is wrong. All of you decide who it is, but somebody clearly is different than the others on whether that has value or not. The good news is every GM that I talk to in the market expects a better 14 than 13. Across the board. Tourism on a national level is trending up. The Washington Tourism Alliance has put a couple bills out, and essentially what they're trying to do is get the state to agree to come up with a way to fund tourism through private money, through the private sector, I should say. They're looking for $7 million, which, if you remember on the previous slide, is the lowest number of any of our competitors. So what they're really going to do is they're going to get this legislator hopefully to agree to work with the private business. They've already determined hotels get this percentage, retail get this percentage, et cetera, and then they're going to either tax them, try to get a rebate on tax, assess taxes. They're going to try to find some way that the businesses that benefit the most pay for that funding, kind of like the Potato Commission does an assessment. So hopefully, frankly, that will happen. The national park, over 100,000 guests a year, and I'm guessing that number is low, frankly. You know, I lived in Yosemite National Park. It's beautiful. Every place has, you know, those kinds of spectacular geographic places. Virtually no one has a nuke reservation. I mean, where do you go to see that? And I think the international demand is just significant. I think that's just going to be off the charts. So hopefully that will help. The TPA rate we talked about earlier increased. That's another $280,000 that the VCB gets to go out and do marketing with, and they've done a fabulous job managing that money. I think part of that occupancy, the reason you didn't see a decline, is sports markets just growing like leaps and bounds. That's directly tied to the VCB efforts, wine tourism up, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that money will really benefit us. Again, we're going to be up. There's some big things to impact it, and go Hawks.